All righty, what is up, everybody, and welcome back to another Decentraland live stream, or Decentraland Builders live stream. We have got two awesome guests on today. Returning with us is DefiniteCash. There have been some questions about textures and materials and making sure that they work properly. A lot of that might have to do with the size of a texture or material. So after our intros, we'll get into some compiling methods. And then following that, we will have Murpheus on for the first time. Murpheus, a prolific developer in the Decentraland space that has worked on some awesome large-scale builds and some custom work. And he will be showcasing how we actually go about getting our assets into the SDK and into the Visual Studio Code, and then how we can manipulate our custom models once in this test scene. So, oh yeah, I see we're getting their Twitters in there as well. Give them a follow. Great people we have on today. But so to kick it off, we are going to look at the latest Decentraland Builders contest that has been launched. So we are on a Lost theme right now, and we just did the Lost Fountain, and now we have a Lost Island. So with the Lost Fountain, you all develop these mythical fountains that had special abilities. But it turns out that you gave into your temptation and you drank from that mystical fountain and you lose consciousness and you wake up in a completely random place. So if you thought you were in the middle of nowhere before, now you have no idea where you are. And this is going to be the first time that you can actually build on a 2x2. So you'll have 4 parcels. What's up, BitLancer? What's up, Yuri? See you guys in the chat. But so you will have a 4 parcel development constraints, and I mentioned this in the Discord, but you'll want to think about where you want to put the most detail of your island, and it can have anything on it. It can be created out of anything, and it could follow the theme of your fountain, but you're not required to have it be the same theme as the fountain if you had submitted one previously. So this is I'm excited to see the submissions for this, and we will actually build off of these islands over the next couple of themes. So you're going to want to think a little bit about the storyline, what's on that island, and I don't want to leak too much, but you'll find out when the next themes are announced. Also, judging has been completed for the competitions 2 and 3. So we do have our amazing winners, and that announcement event where we're combining 2 now just because we have a lot of different events going on with SandStorm, and it's hard to find time slots for all of them. But so next week, we will be doing a live event during this time slot where we announce the winners for contests 2 and for contest 3. So I hope everybody is excited about that. There were a lot of amazing submissions. One other, two more announcements. A lot of announcements today. Myth Division has just published a new proposal, a build proposal on the SandStorm site. So they are looking for custom assets to be built in the sandbox, and they are paying 1,000 Matic if anybody is interested in that. And then last update, last but not least, is the V Empire is co-hosting, well, I guess throwing a party with SandStorm at the SandStorm headquarters in Sandbox this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and they will have giveaways, I have been informed, as well as DJ influencer talks and good times at least. So yeah, I think I covered everything. Contest 4, we're doing the announcements next week for 2 and 3. There's a new proposal up if you want to make some more money, and party on Thursday with V Empire in Sandbox. So I think that's it. Lastly, before I bring DefiniteCash on, I'm going to share my other screen really quick. We're going to look a little bit at Blender. Slater, I think you might have to pop my screen back up when I go back and forth. Cool. So here we are. I had to put a plane here so that I know which one is actually which one. But these books here look seemingly identical. However, one of these books has a file size of, I think, 11 megabytes. So just this one tiny book, I don't even think it's the size of a cube. It's not even the size of a cube. So one of these tiny books, when exported as a GLB file, has a file size of nearly 11 megabytes, which means that I cannot deploy this on a one parcel scene. And in fact, I tried deploying it on a 2 parcel scene, and for some reason, it wouldn't let me do that either. So the reason for that has to do with the way the textures are sized before you bring them into Blender, and how you can apply those textures prior to exporting. So the book on the right here is actually the model that I can't deploy, and thanks to the amazing DefiniteCash, I now have a book on the left that is 1/20th of the size of, or 1/20th the file size as the one on the right here. So I'm going to pass it over to DefiniteCash now. Slater, if you want to switch to his screen share, and DefCash, maybe you can just go over what the initial file size was, and then how you reduce it, what your process is, everything good like that.
All right. Hey, everyone. So right now is my screen up?
Yes, we can see
Okay,
your screen.
I've got like as you can see, like a 500 by 12 by 512 resolution picture on my screen. And the first thing you'll know when you're making textures is that you need the picture, right? So what I've done here is I've taken all the pictures and I've put them into one picture. And this is like the first step of compression, I guess, because now instead of having 4 smaller pictures, I have one slightly larger file, okay? So that's like the first step that I want to talk about. And the second one is the resolution. I said it's 512 by 512. So when you're deploying onto Decentraland, the recommended resolution is 512 pixels or 1028. So, I find that 512 is better if you're going for compressed, but it can look kind of bad if you have to zoom all the way in. So you do have to take that into regard. So the very first thing that I did is I took this picture, I put it together, and this is actually pretty big because these files here that DCL.Curations sent me, each book, the picture of the book is, what was it, like 20 MB each or 15? Anyways, they were large, but that's because they're like extremely detailed. So if you zoomed all the way in, like his like quality wouldn't get worse. It was really good. So the first thing I did was I reduced the quality. And what you can do if you want to compress your files is you can go to this website here, is one that I would recommend. It's Optimizilla. So it's actually called imagecompressor.com, but this is their brand. So if you just upload a file here, it will compress it, and you can download it, and it's free. So that's nice. And there's actually a tool on this website. So if you upload a file, you can pick like the colors on it. So it's like a scale, and you can compress it even further if necessary with that. But I would recommend not touching that.
So, sorry, quick question. Well, first thing, Optimizilla is actually the compression application that Decentraland does recommend using. So I have used Optimizilla before, and it's awesome and very, very intuitive. I have a question though with uploading the file here and compressing it. You mentioned, taking away kind of quality of the image. So would you say that kind of compressing is just like when you're compressing a file, all you're doing is reducing the quality, or are you actually changing the size of this file? Like not the megabytes, but just the size of it in general.
Well, there are 2 types of sizes. So there's the size of the picture in terms of resolution, and that's not getting changed by Optimizilla. It's just the size of the file, and that's being reduced by the quality, but you can barely tell, it's so good, right? And the second way of compression is actually like you can pick, like if I click here on resize, you see I can just like convert it to a bunch of different like sizes. However, I would recommend 512 by 512, and that means that there's 512 pixels going this way and 5 on the X and Y axis. So there's less pixels in your picture. So, it takes less memory. But there is like one trick that I want to really showcase, but you need to get all of these aspects out of the way. So like here we got your picture. Let's say I compressed your book from on OptiMozilla before putting it here, because otherwise this picture would be like 50 MB. So now that I've compressed all these pictures, put them here together, I can download it. And once I download it, I'm on Blender now, and I've got your book. So I didn't change anything to your book, right? But when you're making like a picture, so you want to go here, and you want to go to materials, right? And you can see I have material 2 here. I'm just gonna get rid of it for the purpose of the explanation, and I'm gonna click new. But before I get into this, it's really important to say you gotta check how many megabytes or kilobytes your downloaded file here is. And if it's on the larger size, you can always compress that picture again before proceeding. So do we have any questions before I show how to compress it on Blender as well?
Check in the chat. It doesn't look like it. I do
Okay.
see Sahid and Vivi Cryptos in the chat, though. What's up, guys?
What's up, everyone? All right. So here we got your book, right? And we've compressed all the pictures, and it's like as low as we possibly dare take it without hindering the quality. But one important aspect to note is that when you're doing that, it doesn't actually, your picture can be photoshopped. Like, how we had like the 4, let me just show it again. The 4 pictures here. We have this, the book cover here, and the pages for the side. So if you want something to be more detailed than others, you can make it larger here and make the other details smaller. So if you have something that's, one color, you can make it pretty small because it's not going to matter. So when we go onto Blender here, I got rid of the material. And first you should know, like, you click the material and you go to this red black ball, and then now we can click on new. So here we have the texture or the mesh of the book. And when I go onto, you see this icon here, it says base color. I'm not gonna like click on this ball here or this thing. I'm gonna click on this yellow dot. And that lets me like pick different ways to influence the base color. But we want the picture that we just made. So we're gonna go to image texture, open, and I forgot to download the file, so let me just download that real quick. Getting downloaded, there we go. So downloads, open file, and you might tell nothing happened, and that's because I'm gonna press on Z, and we're gonna go to rendered. Okay, and you'll notice I immediately have the perfect book, and that's because I already did the trick on this book, which is kind of unfortunate, but let me show you how we do that. So you got your book, and for you, maybe the textures aren't matching up. So we're gonna fit them and make them match. So you're gonna go hit here, UV editing. Okay, so our book is still here. And if you wanna see the book live, you can just press on Z and go to rendered again. And great, you can see I made this in a hurry, so we're missing some spots here. Or actually, no, that's because I moved the texture of the book while we were showing you on the editor. So we have something to fix here, okay? And what you want to do is, or what I normally do is, I go onto this face select, so I can click this, and then I hold shift and click this other triangle here. And you can tell that it kind of like popped up over here. So here you have different ways of like selecting these. So you can pick the dots themselves, you can select the lines, you can select the whole box, but we're just gonna select the dots itself. So go here, and then I got this, and then I click on move. So I just drag this, and you can tell on this side it will move when I drag it around. So I just match it up with the corners. So now that we got this corner matched up, you can see immediately it looks way better on the right. But when I zoomed in, it looks pretty bad. But that's the compression at work, you know. And when you're looking at it from further away, it's really hard to tell. And realistically, in game, no one is going to get this close to your book. So this is about the distance I would expect to see it, and it looks pretty good to me like this. Like maybe we should have a light in this scene so you can tell better. But as you can see, when I click on A, we have all of the what do you call these? The faces here on the UV map. So I wouldn't recommend to do them all at once, because if we do want to do the pages here on the side, you can just click those. And this is the next point that I should mention, because one other aspect of compression is reusing the same texture. And, you know, as you can tell, we have 3 sides of the same book for the pages. And when I click on this one, you can see I'm using this. When I click on these, you can tell I'm using the same texture. But I guess what you could do if you really wanted to is look at these and try to line them up, or use a tick. Oh, that's the wrong side. So you can like try and line them up more so it looks a bit more authentic, or use a texture that's similar on the same side. So you can be smart about the textures you pick, especially if they're easy to like put on a sphere, because that's a real texture. So, you know, what I mean by putting on a sphere is, imagine it doesn't matter which way you look at the texture, it's always connecting, like it won't look weird. But this one will, you know, but that's not an issue because we just want to do these simple sides. And yeah, that was more or less the entire tutorial of how to get your texture, put it on the book, but you want to have a compressed image and in a 512 by 512 resolution. And once you get here, you can just pick, and I remember I press shift, or I can just drag like this. And then here I can do the same. So you can just like say, you know, if the back and the front of the book are the same, you really only need one picture here. So that's another way you can compress things. It's by reusing your assets.
We do have a question from Yuri.
Awesome.
Does an empty material in Blender with no textures count as +1 texture in DCL Builder?
Sorry, does an empty material count as an extra texture?
Yes.
Was that the question? So if it's completely empty, right, it shouldn't like show us a texture at all. Like, so let's try and explore the issue here. So I'm going to go back to layout, and then here I got a material, which is the texture, and we got a new one that's empty and a new one that's empty. But if I export this file like this, while these are empty, it won't matter because they won't count. But you might as well. And always remember, you got to go into object mode because it won't let you do this in edit mode. Got to select it, and you can always just click on minus and get rid of those empty textures.
So I have a follow-up question. With the book, since you put all 4 or all 3 of those images into one file, that's just one material or texture. But if you had put those into 3 separate files and compressed them all separately, would that now be that would be 3 textures, right? That you're adding.
Yeah, that would be 3 textures. So that's why putting them all into one thing is way better. And what other people do, especially when you're building in Decentraland, you should well, it's really hard for me to show this right now on the spot, but if you look into the docs, they have a picture somewhere you can download on the Decentraland forum, or the doc website, and it's a picture of a color palette, and that's the one that's supported by Decentraland. So what some people do is you just download that color palette and use that as your texture, and when you're drawing things here in Blender, you can like just select like how we like when we're in UV editing. Let's say I want the whole front of the book to be red, so you just go to the color palette and you would do something like this and just get them all on the red, so the whole front of the book is gonna kind of be like reddish. And I kind of missed a spot here, but you should get what I mean by that. So it's kind of like having Lego blocks. If you have like a palette that's like just a picture with like 100 different pictures supported by Decentraland. But one quick thing I still want to mention about your book is over here. I just noticed now you're missing some texture here, and that's because where is that sneaky line?
Oh,
there it is. You see it there?
A little
Yeah,
rascal.
so probably gonna press R and then, I don't know, rotate it 90 degrees, move this one down here. And something you should know is when you're doing this, imagine your maps don't like work out well. And what I mean by your maps is when you select like this, here, you can see some of these. This is like a straight line. So this is because you have something that you extruded here. So if I go into edit mode, where is edit mode tab? And let's pick let me switch out of this to layout. And are we in edit mode? Nope. Press tab, now we're in edit mode. And I'm gonna press on edge select. So you can see you probably had an edge here, which you selected and you extruded. So what you want to do is you want to find the actual face that you're missed out, like this one here. And then when you right click it, you can go to UV unwrap face and click on unwrap. So what I just did there is if we go back to UV editing, is he here? Yep, he's here. You can see it's not a line anymore, but it's like the actual face of what you made here. And you see it's probably two triangle faces here, so we missed another one. Yep, there was the other one. So, if we click on unwrap now, you can see it happen live. It just went here, and now it's like a proper face. So you can like align it and texture it properly. So it kind of looks horrible because I just ruined your book.
No. Don't worry, I've got a good copy saved.
Yeah. But yeah, if you have like good textures, it should be quite easy. And then of course you have these tiny faces here, which you would wanna, you see they're like really hard to work. So you can just click unwrap, and then there you got a way better thing to work with. So you could have like here, like this on the gold texture, for example. All right, so I think I want to know if anyone's got any questions, because when you're making these things, it's kind of straightforward, but you might have something that I didn't think of answering right now. So
we've only seen that one question come through thus far, so I think we might be good.
all right.
Yeah, so we just went over the size requirements or the best sizes for your images when you're bringing them into Blender to be used in Decentraland, and then utilizing Optimizilla in order to compress your files, compiling your different photos into a single image so that that only counts as one texture instead of multiple, depending on what you're applying it to, and then getting it into Blender. So thank you, DefiniteCash. That was awesome.
Thank you for having me. I hope this helps.
Yes, yeah, of course. And then I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, Slaterade, in 1 second. There we go. So 9A7A did have so two questions actually. Yuri, can we have a link for the palette? I am going to try to find a link to the palette, or DefCash, if you can potentially get your hands on that and link it, that would be awesome. And then 9A7A suggested limit of textures is 2 per 1x1. I feel like it's much more than that. I'll have to. I don't know it off the top of my head what the suggested limit of textures is for a 1x1, but I'll get that as well. We do only have about 30 minutes left though. So I just want to quickly go over what we did what we did last week in the SDK. For anybody who wasn't there, we went to the docs at Decentraland, or on the Decentraland site, and we installed node.js. We also installed the CLI, which is the command line interface. And that again was just once you have your command, oops, not what I meant to do. Once you have your command prompt, It opens up and looks like this, and we simply ran the installation here, the global installation, and then we ran the very first scene after we did the DCL in it, which gave us all of the files that we needed in our folder in order to work with a test scene in Decentraland. And then we ran the DCL start, which popped up that scene that had the cube that would duplicate and duplicate and duplicate. So that's just kind of a quick refresher. And now I will hand this off to Murpheus. Murpheus, welcome on to the first stream here. And if you want to just give a quick introduction of yourself, and then go ahead and get into deploying an actual scene and deploying to coordinates.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Murpheus. Been learning how to code for the past 6 to 8 months. And with that, just trying to expand my knowledge with the SDK. It's been tons of fun experimenting with different things. And it's not as hard as you think if you know a little bit of code. It is easy to kind of figure things out. The documentation is great on the Decentraland website, so that's really helpful. So I guess I'll start here. Can you guys see my screen all right?
Yes, we can see your screen. We've got Decentraland up on the left and then your Visual Studio Code up on the right.
So when you are in your folder here, this is just a test scene I created. You want to go to your scene.json file, and this is where you can expand your test scene to as many parcels as you want. So right here, you can see I've created a 2x2, and you can add more tiles to this. Once you save it, they will populate, and you can experiment on the largest scale scenes that you like. It's important that you set your base as the southwest parcel. So you can see that would be 0, 0. And when you load the scene using DCL start, that's where you will spawn.
So out of curiosity, because I actually had issues with this on my deployment, and it gets harder, I guess, the more parcels you have. But for example, if you had put in parcels 0, 0, and then 1, 0, and then 1, 1, and then 0, 1, does that order of parcels matter for your deployment?
I don't think so. I've never really tried that though, but I'm almost positive that whatever parcels you list here, it will include them all. It might be best practice to try to list them in some sort of connected order. But if you do run into issues doing that, I would suggest just trying to fix that. And
best practice. I like that as a best practice. Just make sure you follow some sort of order.
Yeah. So when it comes to placing things on the scene, the Decentraland parcels are 16 meters by 16 meters. So when you are starting, you can also see up here, wherever you're running, it will tell you which parcel you're on. That will change as you get there. So to place things, you're always going to be starting here. And let's say if you place it at 16, 16, it's going to be right in the middle. If you place it at 32, what did I do? If you place it at, say, 32, 16, it's going to go 32 this way, and then 16 this way. It's going to be right here. So this is where you gotta do a little math and why you want to set that parcel right here. Because if you set your base parcel as, say, this one, it's going to start 0, 0 right here. So then you're going to have to use negative numbers to go this way and positive numbers to go this way. And it can get a little confusing, especially when you're working on a larger scene.
So each one of those white boxes there is 1 meter, basically?
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Each tile there. So let's get into importing your 3D files. I've already put some code up here. We're going to go through that. But the first step, what you want to do is open your folder for your scene. I just have my test folder here, and you just want to create a new folder called models. And then you simply take your GLBs and put them in that folder. And as you can see, it's populated here now.
I don't know why, but like the way that works just blows my mind. You know, like how you just move this models folder in and now it just shows up in the code. It's like magic to me.
Yeah, VS Code's really good about stuff like that. So I'll uncomment these and we can kind of go through what they are. So the model's name is book and my last slice pizza box. And this is the code for the pizza box and this is the code for the book. So let's just go through the book you guys created. You want to create a const first. It's a new entity. And you don't have to name it here, but you can. And I would recommend naming it, especially if you're going to use the builder HUD, which I'll mention later, and could even possibly be a whole new tutorial. It's a wonderful tool for builders. Then you want to add that entity to the engine. So next thing you're going to do is
this code does not come pre-populated, right? So you added that folder in, and that folder gave you the files that you can now reference within the code. But okay, got it.
You have to type this out yourself, yeah. And so this is where you add your manipulation here. Transform. It's important to remember that for each 3D file you have, you need a unique transform. You can see here, this one is 1, this one is 2. And this is where you're going to add your position, rotation, and scale. And we'll see what that looks like in a second. And then the final thing you're going to do here is to your book, add component or replace that transform that you just created, which will add these parameters there to your book. Finally, this is where you import it. Const GTFL shape 2. And just like the transforms, these need to be unique as well for each GLB. You can see this one's 1, this one's 2. I just kind of like naming them in order as I import more, 3, 4, 5, etc. And this is going to be a new GTF shape. And you're just going to reference the path, the models folder, and then the name of the actual file, .glb. And we'll save here and see if it will populate for me. I think because I need to restart after importing those. I was hoping to avoid, because it can take a few minutes, but we'll go DCL start here. Maybe it's just because I'm glitching.
So you're running DCL start directly from the terminal there. So you can do that within the Visual Studio Code versus doing that in the command prompt.
Yep. I like using the terminal in VS Code because it's just right there. It's easy to move around the different files, but you can use that from the command prompt as well. And this should load up with our entities now. It might take just a minute. While that loads, I'll go ahead and mention the Builder HUD. This is a package you can download. Wonderful tool for builders. Makes things very easy, and you just simply put this into your command prompt while you're in your scene folder. And there's a lot of instructions here on how you can use it. It's very user-friendly, it's very simple, and it makes moving things around in your scene and experimenting with their size and their location to each other a breeze as compared to, if I want to move the position of my book, I would have to go here and, enter like 7 instead of 8 and then see how that looks. And then maybe I want to move it more, enter 9, and it can be a bit repetitive. And okay, so there is the pizza box that has loaded. And we are missing the book.
There's one quick question. Does fluid simulation work in Decentraland?
I don't know what that means.
I really need to find out the answer to this. I posted a video somewhere in the Discord, and I'll have to find it again, Yuri. But I think it's just a very unintuitive way. Like there's a roundabout way that you have to go in order to get fluid simulation. But I will have to verify that. I'll take a note down.
We do have our book. It's just come in a little high. So
Perfect.
Here's how you manipulate. So that would be the position. And you have the x-axis, the z-axis, and the y-axis here is the height. So let's put that at 0. We're going to save. We should bring that book down. So this book's actually going to have to be in a negative. Let's try -2. If we want it a little bit lower, so it keeps moving it down bit by bit. Let's try -3. Still out of bounds a little bit over there, but it's okay. So let's just try, say, 10. This to 10. There it goes. Not sure why that bounding box is still on there. It should be in bounds, but that's okay. We can experiment anyway. So your position is obviously where it is in the scene. Rotation is just like it sounds. If you want the book facing the other way, let's just try, say, 90 here. That is flip the book over there. The scale, so you can change all the different axes. So I'm gonna do once again. Something's a little wonky with this book file, but as you can see, it made the book big and fat. Let's try with this pizza box. So if we want to, say, stretch it on the Y scale, that's going to be up and down. We're going to have a stretched out box there. We can stretch it on the Z. And now if we want to make it thicker, we'll do this on the X. Do a big fat pizza box. There we go.
So when you're putting in the different numbers there, like, did you just make it 5 times thicker when you did that? Because I feel like it didn't get 5 times thicker.
Yeah, that's exactly what it did. Let's take a look at it. It looked 5 times to me. Pretty skinny box there.
Maybe it was 5 times. Okay, so it's like a multiplier.
Yep, there's 10.
Okay, got it.
We brought the book back in bounds. So this is how you can manipulate placement and size and rotation as far as where you want things to be placed, what direction you want them to face, and what size you want them to be. You can get very specific with these. If I want this to, it's a pizza box, you can do decimals, 10.2. So it doesn't have to be whole numbers. You can get very precise with your sizes there to basically allow you to create exactly what you want, exactly the size you want it to be. Same thing with position and rotation. You can use decimals to get things perfectly placed. I would highly recommend using the Builder HUD. When you do that, you're going to be able to select the different entities, and this name right here is what's going to show up here. So that's how you're going to identify them, by using the Builder HUD. Otherwise, you don't need names here, but it becomes very helpful when it's going to show up here as book, and then you have position, rotation, and scale here by 1. And you can change this as well. It's not allowing me right now because I don't have any entities in there.
So yeah, out of curiosity, I mean, I know you have to kind of like install the Builder HUD and you don't have entities in there right now, but I'm assuming you've got, like, since it's showing up for you, it doesn't just normally show up for everybody, right?
No, I did install it actually. I just didn't add it. I didn't import it in or anything like that. So that's kind of part of the whole process of importing it and then adding and attaching your entities to it. And then it allows you to really manipulate things in the scene in a very much more convenient way to move them around first and then putting them in the code later. But that could literally be a whole tutorial on how to use that. It comes with a scaffolding that you can go around the scene on, and it's just a wonderful tool for builders. I don't build anything without it.
I will say one thing to note, and this goes for the SDK and the builder, is the DCL builder. If you are working with multiple different objects, like for example, in Blender, you could build out your entire scene and export it as one model, meaning if you have a house and there are couches in it and chairs in it and everything like that, you could export all of that as one model. And then if you were to rotate it, all of the items are going to rotate. But here, for example, if there was a house here and say that pizza box was sitting on a kitchen table in the quadrant that it's currently in, and then you go and you rotate the house, now you're going to have to completely reposition every single object in the house to be reoriented and placed back in those rooms. So that gets into always developing your objects facing the right direction. That way you don't place everything in code and then realize it's facing the wrong way, like facing a wall of your neighbor, and you have to go through and tediously and meticulously reorient everything.
That there's actually a workaround with that by declaring parents.
Okay.
So for instance, you can declare the house as a parent, and then everything you're putting in the house, you declare, like say the table, you're going to tell that table that the parent is the house. You're going to tell that pizza box that the parent is the house, or even the parent is the table. And then we call those children. So if you move the parent, it moves the children as well.
Got it. But you would have to go through your code and parent all of those objects individually?
Yep, you would have to declare a parent for each one. I like to do it as I go. It's very easy.
Could you show, for example, like if you were to parent the book to this pizza box and then move, say, the pizza box, hypothetically the parent or the book should move as well? And also Vivi Cryptos, I saw you had a question: which programming language do you need to learn to do this stuff? This is .ts, which is TypeScript, which I believe is a superset of Java or JavaScript.
Yep, this is all TypeScript. And if you know a little bit of JavaScript, it's pretty easy to figure out. So the way you do it is very simply this line of code right here, book.setParent, and then you declare what entity you want to be the parent. So that's my Last Slice Pizza box. And now the coordinates that you put in are no longer going to be starting from 0, 0, 0 here. Now they're going to be starting from the pizza box. So let's put this all back at, let's just say 1, 1, 1. Put that back at 0. And let's see if that gives us. So the book should be around here.
I wonder if it's inside the pizza box.
I'm not really sure what's up with that book file, because it was really moving like all over the place when I was adding like size to it, which was really strange. That it moved it like all the way across the land. I've never seen that happen. I don't see that book.
What if you just shrink down the? Something tells me it's inside the pizza box. I don't know where else it could be.
Let's see.
Hey, there it is.
You see the book?
Yeah, it's up. It's up high in the sky for some reason. There.
So now the book's position is going to be based on the parent. Let's just bring it down, maybe -5. Obviously, the position now at 5, -5, 5 is not where it would be if we were starting from 0, 0 here, right? But in relation to the book, it's -5 going that way, 5 up, and 5 over this way. So if I move the pizza box, it should move the book. So let's move the pizza box, let's say 10, 10. And there they go.
Look at that. You make it seem easy. Maybe it is. Well, I feel like honestly, the hardest, one of the hardest things is getting like the node.js installed and getting like everything set up. But once you have everything set up and you've got these test environments, it seems kind of straightforward. I'm curious, we have 10 minutes left here, and I don't know how difficult this would be or if it's even possible, but like if you decided after you've developed a model that you wanted to animate it, can you animate it directly from the code, or would you animate it back in Blender and then pull that animated object in here?
So the answer to that question, it kind of depends. So you can move things around in the scene. You can tell them to move and like float around from one position to the next, rotating in the air, growing or shrinking depending on how close you get to them or how far away you are, like all sorts of different activations like that. But if you wanted to say you have like a treasure chest and you want the chest to open when you click on it, that would be an animation you have to add somewhere else first, like in Blender. You can't.
Got it.
Really...
So you would basically do the animation in Blender, and then in the code, you would say when somebody clicks this, play animation.
Yep, exactly.
Got it. And that does, on the animations, I meant to bring this up earlier, but last week we had put 2 different animations into a Blender file and exported that as one object, and did confirm with DefiniteCash that you can only bring in one animation per object into the builder. So the roundabout way, or I guess the work through, would be to have those as different Blender files or different .glb files, and then put them into the scene separately with animations. So just wanted to make sure I covered that from last week.
Yeah, nice.
Are there any questions for Murpheus here or for DefiniteCash? So anything about the compiling that somebody might still have a question on, or anything about the node.js and Visual Studios and how to get your models into the test scene via the SDK? No questions? I think that might be it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys having me. I'd love to continue doing some more of these in the future and try and teach as many people as possible how to program. It's not that hard. I've only been coding for about 6 to 8 months. Like literally knew nothing. Took a little boot camp, learned some JavaScript, and then everything in the SDK started making a lot of sense. So if you if you have zero coding background, take a little class, or there's a lot of self-learning tools out there. And once you pick up a little bit, it's easy to pick up a lot more.
Was that boot camp online? Perhaps do you know the name of it?
It was a virtual boot camp. There's tons of them out there, and honestly, there's a lot more like self-learning tools too that are less expensive. Udemy and things like that, where you can just take like a JavaScript course, and it's really all it takes, because you take a little crash course and then you start being able to read code, and then when you can read it and it makes sense and it's not just a bunch of gibberish, it's a lot easier to kind of add on. And the awesome repository for Decentraland is a great place where I learned a lot when I first started on the SDK, and just importing those scenes and just changing them and breaking them and enlarging things and shrinking them to fit my little 2 parcels and putting them all over the place. So a lot of experimentation is how I learned a bunch of what I know.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for everybody's reference here, Decentraland hasn't really been out for all that long. So a lot of the people that are coding and that are building in Decentraland, they haven't been doing this their entire life. A lot of them are like Murpheus, who just picked this up 8 months ago. I do see one more question from Yuri. How are the colliders calculated? Mesh colliders or box colliders? If I understand that question correctly, you could do it either way, because if you have like that book, for example, it could be that you just put in a box, make it a collider, and then nobody can like get close to the book. But if you wanted, you could also take the book and then just duplicate the book, strip the materials, and make a duplicated version of the book the collider. There are certain instances, for example, with like trees or very tall things like pillars, you might not want to make the entire object duplicated into a collider, because it'll just use unnecessary tries. So if you've got like really tall pillars or trees, instead of making the whole thing a collider, that's when you could just put like a box down at the base, because nobody can get up into the tree anyway. So you just wanted to make it seem like the tree is solid, but you're only making like the bottom portion of that tree solid. So I hope that answered your question, Yuri. It really depends on how many tries you have in your scene and where you can kind of save some space, depending on how you want people to interact with the items that are there. All right, cool. Okay, yes, he said it did answer his question, or they said that it did answer their question, which is awesome. Outside of that, I think we're done for today. So yeah, again, we covered compiling, we covered the sizing with DefiniteCash. For textures and how best to use these textures in Decentraland. And then we went into the SDK and showed how you can bring all the custom objects that you're making into the SDK, deploy and manipulate those. So I just want to say, thanks again, DefiniteCash, for coming on. Thanks again, Murpheus, for coming on. And thanks everybody for watching.
It's my pleasure. Good luck out there, everybody.